Hello everyone, I'm Santiago, and today I'm gonna be testing the entire Far Cry franchise on the Steam Deck. So, we start with Far Cry 1, we finish with Far Cry 6, there is quite a few games in between, so let's get started right away. We're going to jump from one game to another. So let's start with the first one. Native resolution, 4x anti-aliasing, full screen on, VSync on. This is absolutely necessary if you want it to lock the frame rate, unfortunately. Maximum settings, and I installed the silent patch. It was a pain in the butt to make it work. So without the silent patch, VSync doesn't work, so you're unable to lock the frame rate to 60, which is the Steam Deck's refresh rate, and it's unnecessary to have 200 FPS. So yeah, I'll maybe make a guide on how to make it work properly. If you have it on Steam, not on Uplay like me, it's probably working just fine. So keep that in mind. But if you have it on Uplay only, it'll be a pain in the butt to set it up to lock it to 60. If you don't mind and you don't care about the 60 frames cap, you should be good to go. So why is it having those harsh drops? Well, that's shader compilation. Oh, no ammo. I fricked up. So that's shader compilation. The first time you see an effect, it's going to stutter. Luckily, there's very few of them. The first time you attack an enemy, it happens. The first time you shoot certain surface you haven't seen before, that happens as well. Let's see, if I shoot the water, it should stutter. No, it didn't. So it's pretty good in that regard. Pretty quick to compile. Only the first time you launch the game, this will happen. Oh, I forgot to grab the rifle. But it's 60s across the board. Also, the silent patch is recommended because you also get fixes to the game itself. It has a few issues regarding AI and they shooting through walls, and the reflections on the water are not as accurate. They are not screen space, by the way. So yeah, Far Cry 1, completely fine. Let's jump into Far Cry 2. Because as you can see already, Far Cry 1, completely fine. Works fine. Yeah, that's basically it. Okay guys, so now Far Cry 2. Native resolution, 2x MSAA. If you go any higher, it will drop below 60, widescreen on. Basically the highest settings. So let's check it out very quickly. And as you'll see, it'll drop below 60 very easily. So the fix is rather simple. Go into display, in geometry, put it on medium, and you're good to go. The game is fixed. So yeah, you gotta lower some stuff. This is an older game, but I recommend locking it to 60. Oh, again, to lock it to 60, let me show you. You need to enable VSync. There you go. Lock to 60 now. If you bought it on Steam, again, I'm playing the Uplay version. It should be way easier to lock it to 60 without the VSync option. So let me burn something. This is the most interesting thing about Far Cry 2 in my opinion. So when there's some fire going on, you're going to get some drops here and there. But I think it's just a limitation of the technology at the time. It's old technology in new hardware configuration. And there's also shader compilation, like I said in the previous one, but it doesn't require any modding or anything like that. Just lower geometry to medium, and maybe the physics for the fire as well. And it should be 60 most of the time. When there's lots of fire, you're going to drop. And let me pick up the phone.
You have one.
Yeah, no, doesn't matter. And it still looks good, considering its age, at least in my opinion. I really miss the physics from games like these, when devs really tried to make physics properly. So yeah, this is another disappointing one, at least in my opinion. Disappointing in a way that I was expecting lock 60s, but it can be a pain without lowering the geometry. So let me skip very quickly to the part with actual fighting. Okay, so let's get into combat. Anybody here? I forgot that I'm on the highest difficulty. I must be a masochist. Explosion! And the physics. It holds up so well with the physics department. It's not even funny.
Let's get in there.
Got him. Anyway, let's jump into Far Cry 3. Alright, so now Far Cry 3. VSync on so we can log it to 60. DX11 please. The game will have a black screen the first time you launch it, so you need to modify a config file. Link in the description on how to do it. Yeah, a pain in the ass as well, but way easier than fixing Far Cry 1. So it works, full screen 1 frame, SSAO, and on video quality everything maxed out except in geometry, which is on high instead of the highest. This because this game is not great with CPU performance, and it's locked to 60 to make it easier for us. So it's not 100% perfect, but it works. It works fantastically well actually. The thing is, when you get into certain heavy areas with lots of fire and enemies, it can chug along. Let's turn this on fire. And this is an interesting game because it's the basis for most Ubisoft games today. This invented the Ubisoft video game. But it's one of my favorite Far Cries personally. See, when fire shows up, the GPU starts crying. And this is one of the games that still wasn't in the TAA era, so we do not have anti-aliasing, but on the small screen it still looks pretty good. So as you can see, fire can be an issue, but no a huge deal. Let's teleport super quickly to fight some enemies. Makes it easier to check the combat and all that. Okay guys, so let's get some fighting going with some draw distance. As you can see there, the GPU chugs along a little. Maybe lower a couple settings if you do not mind. Boom, headshot. I'm using a mouse and keyboard, by the way, just for comfort. I'm terrible with a controller in games like this. Oh god. So dropping it to high might not be a bad idea, but 50 to 60 at least for me is fine. It's pretty normal, unfortunately, in this game to drop below 60, even on higher end computers. Whoa. But again, worst case scenario, so pretty good considering it's a portable machine, at least in my opinion. Otherwise, lock it to 50 with the refresh rate of the Steam Deck at 50 Hz, and you won't even have drops. It will be very smooth. I'm on the highest difficulty, that was a mistake. Alright, so now Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon. It's Far Cry 3 but with a different theme, one of my favorite DLCs of all time. Almost the same settings as Far Cry 3, as you can see here. This one doesn't need any tweaks to run, you jump into it right away without any problems. Everything on high. I went a little bit lower than Far Cry 3 because there's more effects on screen, so the GPU doesn't like it much. And it's basically 60. When a dragon attacks you or there are multiple enemies, it might drop into the 50s because again, this is one of those games that likes using 1 or 2 cores. So there is not much that you can do about it, unfortunately. And as I said in Far Cry 3, otherwise just lock it to 50. Should be a better experience in general. I'm going to avoid that dragon. But if you never played this, please do. It's amazing. It doesn't take itself seriously at all. So super funny, lots of fun. It's a game that just wants you to enjoy. So plenty of fun to be had. Let's get closer to the enemies and I'll continue with the video. Okay, so I'm flying into the enemy compound. Let's exit the glider. Perfect, I did it. Now let's do some fighting. As you can see here, it's using 1 or 2 cores, that's why we're dropping frames. Pretty unfortunate. Single-threaded performance is important on this one, like on Far Cry 3. So not much that you can do about it. You can lower the geometry further, but it still won't fix it completely. So this should be a good balance. Okay. But again, the game itself, amazing. Too bad it has this technical limitation. Yeah, maybe a 40 FPS lock, like I said on Far Cry 3, or a 50 FPS lock is a good idea. I hate when games from this era use 1 or 2 cores. I can still hit though, hit stuff, which is good. Or fire, yeah. So when there's a lot going on, you can see those drops. It's chaos. But it's enjoyable. Anyway, let's get into the next one. Far Cry 4. Alright, Far Cry 4. Finally, this one doesn't require any fiddling around. It works completely fine out of the box. VSync on, so we lock it to 60. And these are the settings. High settings with medium shadows, medium post effects, textures on ultra, and stuff like you see it here. In this case, I recommend locking it to 50 or 40, since when you look into the distance it can drop sometimes. But this one, it's beautiful that it doesn't require any fiddling whatsoever. So yeah, I think a 45 FPS cap or 40 will be better, but still. I mix it between medium and high. Okay, I vaporized him. Call the reinforcements. Thank you. And those stutters, what is it? Shader compilation. You guessed right. Although I died, I think. Not the bees! Jesus, the bees are annoying. Oh my god. There we go. Sorry about that, guys. So there's shader compilation. This is my first launch of the game on the Steam Deck. So after like 5 minutes, it should stabilize pretty easily. Anyway, 45 FPS cap, my advice. If you want to lower the settings to get 60s, you can do it, but it's unstable. So I think this would be the best combination. Again, we are limited by the single core CPU thing. Classic with this engine uses 1 or 2 cores, which sucks. But this should be the last game in the franchise that has that issue. I know, some foreshadowing there. So you can do that, or again, 40 FPS cap I think is the best with these settings, or you can just put it on ultra. Sorry, not ultra, and it will run at 30 frames per second with better visuals. Although for a shooter, doesn't feel great at 30 frames in the Steam Deck, but it looks much better. So yeah, Far Cry 4, great game, highly recommended. Just make sure that you let the shaders compile. If you have it on Steam, it should have pre-compiled shaders though. I have the Uplay version, unfortunately. So yeah, you can still play it. Great game.
We're on our way to you.
This is Far Cry 3.5 basically, which is not a bad thing in my opinion.
Wipe out the rebels!
Oh yeah. Boom, headshot.
We're coming up the road.
Anyway, so this is the 30 frames configuration, just ultra settings, basically. So yeah, fantastically looking game still today. Man, I'm so good with this shotgun. Anyway, let's go into the next one. Now it's time for Far Cry Primal. Native resolution, VSync on to lock the frame rate, of course. Quality settings. If you want 60 frames, you need to go for low settings. I just crank up those textures to high, and you should be good. That's how you get 60s. That's the only way. The game still looks good, in my opinion. This was not the era of FSR or DLSS. So yeah, it's mostly 50 to 60 with low settings and high textures with anti-aliasing as well. Personally, if you like to play like this, that's fine. I prefer a balance of visuals and over 30 frames per second. So yeah, if you want to play like this, it's fine. Runs at 60, you're good to go. But I rather do this. Put it on high here. Then lower shadows to normal, post effects to normal, geometry to normal. Sorry, geometry, yeah, let's keep it on high. Then the volumetrics on normal, no motion blur, please. And it's a mix between normal and high, should be good to go. And in this case, I'll lock it to 40 actually, because it can drop below 50. And there you go. You get better visuals, better draw distances, better shadows. Even a 50 frame lock I think would be okay on this one. But personally I would just stick to 40. And again, this stutters because first time I launch it on the Steam Deck, I'm using an old save file I have. So the shader stutter the first 5 minutes, after that you're good to go. So yeah, 40 FPS cap, recommended. Or play at low settings, and you're good to go. Attack me, come on! Personally, this is not my favorite, nowhere close. But it's a different breed of Far Cry, without automatic weapons and rifles and stuff. So yeah, let's jump into the next one. I clubbed him. That's great. Now it's time for Far Cry 5, which recently got a 60 frames update on the current gen consoles, pretty nice. Okay, on this one, it's basically high settings with low volumetrics to help the GPU, and normal geometry to help the CPU a little bit. You can also play around with FPS locks and all that. I keep VSync on because we have the FPS locks of the system. You can also lower the resolution scale or use dynamic resolution if you want to. Personally, I'm not going to use that. I'll tell you why in a moment. This one again is another one that works right out of the box. But the problem on this one is the CPU. The CPU is maxing out one core. There will also be some shader compilation stutter the first 5 minutes, like on the other ones. If you have the game on Steam, it should pre-compile some of the shaders, so after a few, it should be okay. So what to do about this? Well, lock it to 40. You have some drops due to the shader compilation, but after that, it should be okay. I think I'm going to lock the frame rate inside of the menu. Okay, let's go into the menu. So let me see if I can lock it to 40 from here. Oh yeah, I can. Good. 40. Because the CPU is just suffering. and now you get 40 with some drops into the 30s. It's not a perfect FPS lock, unfortunately. But again, this is the worst case scenario. If you'd rather not deal with this, lock it to 30. But again, the limitation in this particular place is the CPU. Most of the time should be into the 40s. So that's why we're getting these drops. The CPU and the GPU share the 15 watt TDP. So when one of them is getting stressed, the other one has to let them do its thing. Oh, no more RPG ammo, my bad. So that means the GPU is at 900 MHz. It's capable of up to 1600. But it's not getting there because the CPU is basically taking over because it needs the power. So unfortunately, in big fights like this, it's not going to be 40. If you don't mind those fights getting below 40, consider a 30 frames per second cap. It's very CPU intensive. And again, takes away from the GPU, unfortunately. Anyway, let's jump into the next one. Now we're doing Far Cry New Dawn. Basically the same settings as Far Cry 5. Without motion blur, thank you very much. Advanced settings like this. Personally, I'll log it to 30. This one seems to be more CPU demanding than Far Cry 5, surprisingly enough. So, as you can see, when I'm here, it's fine. But once you start fighting, oh man, it's going to drop. And we are 100% CPU. So, do this. Log it to 30. I know, controversial, but it uses way too much CPU. It's not that I have much of a choice, really. On Far Cry 5 you can kinda get away with 40 sometimes, but it still drops pretty often. So yeah. 30 frames should be the target here. Lowering the resolution, not a choice, we are CPU limited. The resolution doesn't change that. Sorry doggy. So log it to 30 and enjoy, I guess, if you like this type of game. Personally, I didn't. But hey, that's my opinion. Very, very CPU intensive. One core at 100%. We meet again, one core at 100%. Anyway, I think I showed you enough. Let's get into the next one. And finally, Far Cry 6. On this one, native resolution. Basically medium settings with low fog. TAA, no motion blur, thank you very much. And no FSR, because in this game it's FSR 1, doesn't look particularly great. Optionally, you can also enable the sharpening if you feel that the game is too soft. Otherwise, you should be good to go. This one seems to be less CPU intensive than Far Cry 5 and New Dawn. Not sure how they did it. Maybe they lowered the amount of stuff going on. So I try to get 40s, but sometimes it will drop when driving around, especially. Otherwise, should be good. And despite me not liking FSR on this game, it can be a good option if you need more performance right away, without much effort. But if you're doing 40 Hz, you're basically already doing sacrifices. But so far so good. So again, optionally FSR. But I think you should be able to play it fine like this. The game still looks pretty good. And the textures look great, actually. Yeah, maybe consider FSR for 40 Hz. Don't mind me. It's a little bit too much, but hey, what can you do? It doesn't look great, but 40 Hz is 40 Hz. Yeah, this is better. Although we seem to be limited by the CPU still.
Have to turn that valve.
So yeah, on the Steam Deck screen might be less noticeable, but that's the way. I mean, the fact that I can run this at 40-ish, while the other ones, Far Cry 5 and New Dawn, aren't able to, due to CPU limitations, it's kind of interesting. Alright, let's now do a 30 frames configuration, super quick, very simple. Disable FSR, on quality, put all this on high, excepting volumetrics, and you should be good. Yep, let's go. And there you get 30 frames with a little bit of graphics. And the game looks sharper because native resolution. So my advice here is to lock it to 30, basically. You get latency with the built-in FPS limiter of the Steam Deck, and you need to enable VSync in the menu. But hey, it works. I don't remember where it was. Here. So you get the latency, but hey, better than nothing. If you find a better way to lock the frame rate, please let me know. I'm interested. But on high settings, looks pretty good. I just lowered the volumetrics for good measure. And we'll explode this. But hey, Far Cry 6 runs better than I anticipated. I think again, the best settings will be 30, and if you really want 40s, you can do it, but you gotta sacrifice visuals. The biggest thing for me is that we need to do FSR1 on ultra quality, but again, on the Steam Deck screen, it's okay. Up to you. Anyway, so that's it. The Far Cry franchise on the Steam Deck. Hope you enjoyed it. My experience so far, Far Cry 1 was a pain in the ass to make it work. You gotta download a mod, a silent patch to make it work properly, link in the description. If not, if you don't do that, you're going to get some weird AI bugs, plus you won't be able to lock the frame rate to 60. You also need to set up a gamepad with the Steam controller, those settings that you have on the OS side. Then Far Cry 2 had again, it was a little difficult to set up because you get a config file. Otherwise it's fine. Then Far Cry 3 is a black screen as soon as you launch it. For that one, again, you need a config file, link in the description to make it work. But everything after Far Cry 3, including Blood Dragon, is completely fine. You just open it, it works right away. You just need to do the tweaks I tell you about in the video with the settings, and you should be good to go. So my experience is great from Far Cry 3 onwards. Far Cry 1 and Far Cry 2 are not amazing on the Steam Deck because you need to do some work to make them be functional. But again, guides below if you want to play those, and I'll see you next time. Bye guys.